Take a look at this, and this, and this. It may seem hard to believe, but the locals here in rural Lincolnshire reckon that all these are part of a posh Roman building, and they've got good reason to think so. Because nearby in this field, a local metal detectorist has come up with some really extraordinary finds. Isn't that beautiful? And look at that. And that. They all suggest that in Roman times, something quite special was going on here. And we've got just 3 days to find out what. The Romans reached Lincolnshire within years of the 43 AD invasion. Lincoln became a great Roman centre, but there are no records of Roman activity at our site, Wickenby, 12 miles from Lincoln. Wickenby seems to be nowhere near any Roman roads, and there's no evidence of a Roman town really close by. And yet metal detectorists have found hundreds of Roman brooches, coins and bric-a-brac in 2 fields around Wickenby. Initial geophys has been done by local archaeologists, but what was happening here in Roman times has continued to remain a mystery. Come on then, Francis, this is the 2004 geophys. What's it tell us?
Well, it tells us there's a lot of archaeology there, Tony. There's an awful lot. There are a lot of ditches there. They're on at least 2 alignments, which suggests at least 2 phases. There are a lot of finds out of the middle. I think you're looking at a fairly major series of Roman settlements.
John, the geophys has already been done. You're redundant.
There's lots of areas we want to actually revisit. I mean, take this anomaly here. That's on the far side of the hedge. I just wonder whether that's an industrial area. And then, look, they've not actually found the limits of the settlement. We need to extend the survey and get the wider picture.
Phil, I've got an odd feeling about this one. The geophys has already been done, and it's Francis who's always saying to us that metal detectorist finds can just be the background noise of antiquity and there might not be much going on here at all. Is it worth doing it?
Well, it is, because what they were able to do was establish unquestionably that there is settlement here. And what we want to do is actually try and open out some bigger areas to put more flesh on their story so that we can actually see what's going on here. Righty-o down here, let's make a hole.
So Phil opens Trench 1 over an area where a large concentration of finds have been discovered. And geophys get going over the rest of the field, where the ditches seem to continue.
Not of a sniff of finds, is it?
No.
But it's not long before something Roman does emerge.
Whoa. Oh. Our first find, our first Shirda pot. Look at that.
Well, don't think we'll call the British Museum quite yet.
Within a few hours of digging, our first trench is already giving us a new insight into what Romano-British people were doing here. Finds on the morning of day 1. Phil, you've been working overtime.
You bet. We've got all the evidence here for a Roman settlement. We've got masses of big sherds of Roman pottery. OK, they're a bit churned around at the edges because they've been in the plough soil, but we've got our first copper alloy object, which was the reason we came here. And we've also got burnt stone, so we can demonstrate that people were actually living here.
You're happy that all that is Roman?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think so. But I'm very happy about this, Tony. It's white, it's very heavy. I think it's lead alloy, but what really excites me about this is that I think this could have been actually melted here on site.
Look at this. A dozen manky bits in a seed tray, and they think they've got the Roman equivalent of Manchester. There's archaeologists for you. Molten lead suggests not rural farming, but metalworking. And John thinks that a huge blob on the geophys may give us more evidence. I don't understand why you're so interested in that blob when there's 50 other blobs.
This blob is actually set within this small ring. And when you look at the characteristics, it's stronger than lots of the other anomalies. And it suggests to me that it might be small-scale industrial, say a small kiln or oven, something like that.
If it is industry, Guy, what do you think it might be?
Oh, I agree with John. There's a range of possibilities. And a kiln, pottery industry, that's perfectly possible. But actually, we've got so many metal finds from the site and scrap-type metal finds that I think one of the most likely possibilities is that it's a furnace to do with bronze metalwork.
And where would the metal have come from?
There's going to be new metal being mined, but also there's a whole industry of scrap metal going on in the Roman world. You know, the time we live in, metal's terribly cheap and labour is terribly expensive. But in the ancient world, as in the Third World today, it's much cheaper to get a man to rework old metal. So you've probably got scrap metal coming in as well as the stuff that's being made here.
So do you think that some of those metal detectoring finds, which look so fantastic to us, could actually have been old metal that's being recycled?
Oh, some of them almost certainly are, because they're so broken and damaged, and it would explain why they're in that state and why they've been left here.
Phil moves to open a trench over John's blob, where we think there might be evidence of metalworking in a recycling centre. Nearly 100 Roman brooches have been found at Wickenby, mostly dating to the 1st century. Helen's been studying them, and she doesn't agree with Guy that they were here to be recycled. Yeah, a lot of brooches, Helen.
There's an enormous number of brooches. It's quite incredible. And I'm having a look at them because one of the suggestions for the use of this site has been that it might be a manufacturing site for brooches. But I can't see any evidence of that. Everything that you can see here has been finished. Everything's been done. There's no unfinished bits and pieces here. The alternative, of course, is that this place might have been taking brooches to cut up for scrap and recycling. But in that case, why only brooches? It's a real mystery to me still.
Guy, you are one of those who thinks that all this is scrap metal, aren't you?
I think I am. Now, Helen just said too many brooches, and that's somehow special, but you know as well as I do that every Roman site produces brooches in abundance.
Yes, but not this abundance.
Well, they're portable.
Yeah.
That's because this is a manufacturing site, whereas the other ones aren't. They're portable, they easily break, and they go out of fashion. What better source of metal for scrap and reworking?
Show me the unfinished brooches. Show me...
I didn't say they were making brooches here.
Hang on, you've had your say, now let her have it.
Well, no, you said it was a manufacturing site. That's what you said, and I just cannot see any evidence of it. These are all finished. The enamelling has all been done, all the tooling, all the pins are there, everything is finished. And if it was scrap, why concentrate on brooches? Why not just use anything for scrap?
I didn't say it was a brooch manufacturing site.
Deary me. What manufacturing site is it then?
A scrapyard.
This is the last chance that we've got to have a look at all the finds that have come up so far. There's going to be more fireworks soon when we start pulling up our own finds. Keep at it.
And the quality of these things is extraordinary as well, isn't it?
But if you've made brooches and they're broken...
Halfway through day one, and Roman Wickenby is already bringing us to blows.
Got archaeology here.
But at least Phil's beginning to expose hard evidence of activity on the site.
Tracy?
Yeah.
This is a lot more promising.
Oh, nice.
Look, what we've got is the top of the natural creeping through, I think. That orangey stuff. And we've got the same stuff there. And then look through the middle. I think we've probably got some sort of a ditch. But when we come back here... Now look.
Oh, yeah.
Charcoal.
Nice.
Now that is the most encouraging archaeological material I've seen in any of the trenches.
With signs of burning, things are looking good for Guy's proposed recycling centre, where tools, sculptures and bowls could have been made. Francis opens a trench where the farmer remembers a pond of water that formed from a spring. If Francis can find evidence of an Iron Age settlement, it could explain why there were people here in Roman times. And it could also help us understand the transition here from Iron Age to Roman culture. In fact, any clues to this Roman site are important, as we're revealing Wickenby to be far more than a farmstead. It's already produced hundreds of metal artefacts and coins. But most surprising is the large number of Roman brooches. Guy thinks that these were part of a rural metal recycling effort, and that Phil's trench may give us supporting evidence. Guy, you promised me a recycling centre. All I can see is a big black stain in the ground.
I didn't promise you anything. I was just indulging in some frantic but sincere speculation.
What have we got?
Well, it is a big black stain in the ground, actually. But it's what's in that big black stain in the ground which is really interesting. I mean, we are getting lots of things like this. Food waste. You see there, they're dining out on oysters. We're getting masses and masses of pottery. But something which we've not had before, and we've only just started to get, is this burnt clay. Now, burnt clay is structural. That has come out of a furnace or an oven, probably something industrial.
Aha!
Oh, yeah, what? It's a big black stain in the ground. If there is an oven there, could it still be there, or is it likely to have gone by now?
It could still be intact. I mean, what would happen is at the top part, it would weather, and so what we'd be looking at is the decayed top of it, but we'd only have to go right the way down before we'd perhaps get the base, the intact bit of it.
But rather than being a recycling centre, it could just be a rubbish dump.
A landfill site,
Yeah. How do you feel now, internationally renowned Romanist? Not to be outdone, Francis is desperately trying to locate the pond of a spring which could give clues to the Iron Age and Roman periods.
Doesn't look very like a pond. That looks strangely undisturbed. That's not a pond. Can we go further over, Ian?
Yesterday, Bridge began to conserve a metal bowl found several years ago at the site. And with evidence for metalworking, there's been speculation this bowl was made from recycled metal. The Romans recycled many forms of metal, including coins. And indeed, coins keep emerging at Wickenby.
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Silver denarius, sort of late 1st, early 2nd century. Look at the detail on the head. Absolutely crisp as a button. It's beautiful.
The site seems crammed with Roman archaeology. But then the roundhouse John found that we thought was Roman could be much, much older. At least if Francis and his passion for prehistory turns out to be right.
So, John, is this the latest geophysics?
Yes, what I've done is I've zoomed in onto that ring feature we were talking about earlier. And there's 3 actual elements. There's a definite kiln there. I have no doubts about it.
Yeah.
Then you see this speckled sort of response. Now, that could be waste material from the kiln. And then clearly we've got the big ring. I mean, it's 15 metres in diameter. There's no obvious entrance that I can see, but there is an internal sort of feature.
That could make it, well, I mean, an early Bronze Age barrow around sort of 2000 BC. And maybe the thing in the middle is a grave. I mean, it's possible, but it's the size of a thing. Look, I mean, if I run out to the edge...
It's a long way.
It's a long way, and we've got to go right round. If you go over there to where we're going to dig, look, we've got to go round here. We're now on the edge of Matt's trench. Where are we going to put that?
Well, like that, in effect, to take in some of this later material.
Yeah, I think it looks very exciting. Right, let's go for it.
So a trench goes in over what Francis hopes to be a burial mound, dating back over 3,000 years.
So we're just getting down to this subsoil now, aren't we? And there's a few bits of bone, animal bone, I think that is. What's that?
Iron Age pot. Well, prehistoric pot. It's not Roman, thank heavens.
Please you then.
Yes, it's interesting.
While we're uncovering the Iron Age story, we're still on the search for evidence of how Roman culture impacted on rural Iron Age life. We know Iron Age Lincoln was transformed into a grand centre within decades of the Romans' arrival. But what about the transition in the country? Clues are emerging in Phil's trench.
It's a cracking piece of pot you got there, Maria. The rim is still going on down, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's still going down that way.
So what we're actually looking at, we've got the rim of the pot going round there. And then this is the shoulder
That's
here.
the shoulder there, yes, and you can see the road sort of sharp change in angle.
So what sort of, I mean, are we looking at a pot this big or this big?
No, probably only about this side. We've got quite the sharp shoulder, and then it's going to come quite rapidly down to a base, I would say.
Is that a you and me type pot, or is that a high status knobs pot?
No, that's rather an everyday, workaday vessel. Late Iron Age, but that will carry on over into the early Roman period in sites out here in the Lincolnshire countryside.
But this could actually be very, very important to demonstrate that people were actually living here when the Romans arrived, that there was actually a pre-existing community living on this site, and that they'd actually adapted to and changed and adopted the Roman way of life when the Romans came in.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's this change of political control, but in many other ways, the life in the countryside just continues on much as it did.
In rural Lincolnshire, adaptation to Roman ways may have taken some time, with Iron Age culture surviving well into the Roman period. Beginning of day 3 here in Lincolnshire, and I'm not just using the 4x4 because it's tipping down with rain, but also because this site has got so big that you need to drive from trench to trench in order to appreciate its size. And we've got only one day left battling through the mud in order to untangle the maze of Iron Age and Roman archaeology. Yesterday, our investigation into a Roman site took a new turn.
What the hell it is?
Foundation trench?
Now!
We began to uncover evidence of a huge prehistoric settlement.
If you get that loose up, but gently, gently.
It could help us make sense of the settlement that was still here in the Roman period. And with time ticking on, we've frantically started opening new trenches. We started digging what Francis hopes is a Bronze Age barrow and grave. And we opened a trench over what seems to be a huge Iron Age enclosure ditch surrounding the site.
I see Ian's doing all the work as usual, Kerry. What's actually happening here?
Well, he's doing very well. I'm just keeping an eye on him, but he's looks like he's getting towards the bottom of the ditch. But we think if you see that dark patch there, it looks like it might have some sort of pit.
It looks pretty massive, doesn't it? I mean, that could be a huge post hole or something like that. Is there anything like that on the geophys, John?
No, not really. All I can see is the ditch. I mean, having said that, you talked about this curving entrance. Now that looks as though there might be 2 large
doesn't it?
Pits there. I mean, it'd be nice if you could envisage a whole line of post holes down the bottom of the ditch.
What a sort of huge palisade.
Well,
well, it's a possibility, isn't it?
If there was a palisade here, it suggests a high-status Iron Age settlement. This might explain why people were still living in Wickenby in Roman times. Yesterday in the pub, Francis and John also decided to open a trench which could give clues to Roman industry on this rural site, as they think it's a kiln. So yet another trench gets underway.
Well, we got 10 metres square here in. Basically, there's a kiln underneath it or something like that. So we want to clear that in short order, really.
I mean, that's basically, we're just starting to hit that edge.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, keep going in.
A bit more.
Yeah.
Only a little bit.
Over the 3 days, Bridge has been busy conserving one of the most spectacular Roman finds from the site, a metal bowl. That is really nice, isn't it?
It's wonderful. It's just looking so much nicer than I mean, I couldn't imagine that this is what was underneath all that horrible caked up old soil.
Yeah,
it's so shiny and so lovely.
Have you got any idea what it might have been used for?
Well, it's certainly not for cooking. I don't think you could put any heat underneath that and the bowl survive. A bowl like this could have been used with some of the weights that have been found previously on this site and the bits of balance arm and so on, to be used for weighing something. I mean, if I take these three rather disparate objects I've got over here and try and show you what I mean, these two could be put together to reconstruct what's known as a steel yard. You hang it from there, so that's your pivot point. There's a hook on this end, generally, and you could use that to hang some kind of bowl from, and then you have a weight on this balance arm which you move up and down until it balances.
But if that was going to be used for weights, then it would be hanging from something, so you'd have to have holes so it could hang.
Yeah, but that's the great thing. Now that the cleaning's been done, actually can see that there's deliberate cut marks and wear marks around the outside of it. Although some of it is corrosion, I believe that this one here is deliberate perforation and cut on the side of the object. Also this one here. Now, they would be two good places where you'd be able to actually suspend the bowl or the pan. So you could have had chains attached to the bowl and then pulling up and attaching to that scale that Helen's demonstrated. And we've also got some really, really nice wear marks on the interior of the bowl. So it looks as though whatever was being used inside it, it was at least harder than the brass it was made from. So you're chucking in things like bronze or stone or iron.
The evidence that Bridge has revealed suggests a story of work, not of rural farming, but of recycling and industry. And the same story is emerging in what Francis had hoped to be a Bronze Age burial. Francis, the round thing that you were looking for in this trench, is it a round house or is it a round ditch or is it just not round at all?
No, it's round, Tony, and it's a ditch. It may be a house, but I think far more likely it's something rather different, because out of that ditch we're finding this stuff. This is plaster? Yeah. And it's Roman, it can't be Iron Age. But what makes it exciting is that some of it is actually painted. As you can see here, it's painted in two different colours.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It is. Now, that sort of plaster only comes out of high-status buildings.
So could there be a Roman building right here?
Well, somewhere in the area. I suspect that what we're looking at here, the reason we're getting so much of this stuff, is that they could have been recycling stone. So you demolish a house and then you chip the plaster off the stonework here in order to reuse the stone somewhere else.
Our site's a glimpse of Roman Britain archaeologists have been missing before. One of a large rural population, of widespread industry and recycling, stimulated by a new commercial culture. And Phil's triumphed with more evidence of this transitional time, with a structure to show off. Yesterday evening, the only tangible archaeology we'd got was stains in the ground, except in the pub. To much hilarity, it has to be said, Phil alleged that he'd got a wall, and the evidence for his wall was 3 manky stones. Have you still got a wall?
Totally vindicated, Tony. Absolutely. Those 3 manky stones that you described them as, look, this is what they are. Look, there they are, going through there. And the edge of the trench, as we saw it, came across there. Now, we've subsequently pushed that back. And look, we've got 1 stone there, we've got another stone there, but we've also got an inside edge to the wall as well, which is coming around there. And
With only a few hours to go, we've at last shed light on the Roman story of our site. But Francis is still so determined to reveal the prehistoric story, he's digging the enclosure ditch himself.
Sorry, Francis, I didn't realise it was you. Is it a post hole? A post pit?
Yes. Back here it is. Going down there.
That's massive, isn't it?
It's very big, John. It's very big.
But you're still not at the bottom of the ditch.
No, and the ditch is rather wider than we thought. It's at least 3 metres. Yeah, move over
So
a bit.
Edge here?
Yeah, from there to where Ian is. I mean, that's a big feature.
Yeah, but any dating?
Well, yes. This post has been dated by pottery. This stuff here And that's a cordon jar, cordon bowl, late Iron Age, so that's about the time of Christ, roughly. Now, that post hole is cut into a completely filled up ditch. And we've got one bit of pottery out of it. It's not much to write home about, but I've shown it to our pot specialist, and this is, I think, early Iron Age pottery. So my bet is that this enclosure ditch was dug sometime in the middle of the first millennium BC, so any time between, say, 300 to 500 BC.
So this post, dating to about the time of Christ, was pushed through a ditch that was created up to 500 years earlier.
I mean, that's coming together really well then, isn't it?
It's fantastic, John. I am so glad you found this feature.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
Geophiz have been at it since dawn. We're also metal detecting and walking the field. There's enough space between the maize plants to look for more Roman pot or tile just lying on the surface. If finds are clustering, we can investigate the hotspots. But the truth is, we're sticking in a trench on a broad scatter of metal detectorist finds and outside the Geophiz survey area. I wonder if our spectators have got any idea of how close to disaster we are.
So what we do then is we'll strip a bit of an area rather than just going straight down.
That's right.
Strip an area and then try it.
In case there's still stuff in the topsoil.
We'll do that.
Is there a bit of a figure there?
Well, that could be, couldn't it?
Our Roman double act, Guy and Richard, have been looking at what kind of Roman coins have been found to see if the dates and values give us any clues as to why they were here. Do we reckon we know what we've got now?
Yep, quite a few coins.
Yes, I know we've got coins. Even I know we've got coins. What kind of date?
Early 2nd, speeding up in the 3rd, quite a lot of 4th century stuff.
Are they valuable?
In ancient terms, no.
So what does that imply?
You'd either use them for everyday purchase on market stalls or fairgrounds or something like that and not worry if you lost them, or if you're giving them to a shrine or something, the tendency is always to give the worst stuff. The copies, the forgeries, the foreign coins.
So lots of finds but no structure?
Yeah, we've got a real mystery. The coins are great, the brooches are great. It's a very, very strange place.
Might as well call in the wrinkled professor while we're at it.
I'm worried when you have a stern face.
We got what looks like our natural look coming on there. But look, there's something looks coming round here. And we appear to have an edge. What I was requesting is to take out a bit of this.
Yeah, take out a bit more.
And see whether or not we can. I mean, if this is a ditch or something like this coming round,
you
put
need
a slot.
to see that natural, the other side.
That's what it's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, let's do that.
What Phil thinks he's got is a man-made ditch cut into the natural geology. He's found one edge, and to confirm it, he needs to find the other one.
Oh, that's the other side of it then.
Nice one.
We now have two edges to our ditch. Just outside the ditch, Matt has been exploring an area where detectorists have found a cluster of coins. And it's produced something rather interesting. Matt, you see I've got this kind of black circle thing here.
Yeah. I think we should get a metal detector or something over them.
Can we borrow you for a minute?
Sweep over these two.
It's not very promising, is it?
Ah.
Oi!
Well, if you dig it out in chunks from a good distance away and then break out a big lump, we'll get Will to go over the chunks that we take out.
Yeah.
Spread it out a bit. Ah, I see. So it's in there somewhere. So now if we just split it up into 2 or 3, and then Will can go over each bit. So let's spread that out a bit. Ah.
Hey!
There you go.
A find. Oh, beautiful.
Absolutely excellent.
Find. Mark! Come and have a look at this, mate. Got another one.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell anything about that, or does it need to be cleaned up?
Well, it's going to be either late 3rd or 4th century AD.
How do you know that?
The size and thickness alone, that's enough to give a good indication.
So what are all these Roman coins doing in a prehistoric site? The answer is not in Roger's mysterious shadowy square. Bridget has found only geology, so his bolts must have been sheared by plain old rocks. Even though everyone's bottling up their feelings, it's been a tense and frustrating day for the archaeologists. Nerves are beginning to fray, particularly when one of the crew steps into Phil's newly cleaned trench.
David! Sorry, sir.
And on the other side of the hedge, the hunt for the all-important centre of the barrow is also proving frustrating. No one can agree where it is.
I've paced it and I think that's where the centre is.
K for Kerry?
Yeah.
Not a chance. We'll mark the perimeter and we'll see who's right.
Well, I'm going to extend it from the trench bit. And
Oh, you do what you want.
I'll tell you when the middle is, Kerry. It is... Hold on. There. Right, let's get the tape. You can
Stand there, you know. What length you got?
24.
There. Centre. Centre. 2 centres then.
2 centres.
We've got 3 different.
You were right mardy this morning about this site, weren't you?
I'm never very good in the morning.
No, but about this site you were going, oh, I don't know if there's anything here.
I think it was quite a sort of high-risk thing, actually. You know, we had a group of finds and a few other finds that might or might not have been, you know, Roman tile and so on. And it seemed a lot to base the, you know, the work on.
Seems to have paid off this time.
Well, it does, yeah, it does. Look at that. What's going on over there?
Guys, I don't know why you're squabbling. We're going to be digging a trench about 5 by 5. It really doesn't matter whether the centre's on Kerry's Point, on Henry's Point, or on John's Point. What matters is, are we going to find anything in it? We'll know tomorrow. Beginning of day 2, yesterday we found this beautiful Bronze Age ditch, which the archaeologists are saying ought to be part of a burial mound. So yesterday evening we projected where the rest of the curve of the ditch should be so that we could excavate the centre of it and hopefully find the burial. But this being time team, there's a fly in the ointment. Mick, come here, what's the problem?
Well, when I was up in the crane last night, when everybody else had gone home, looking down on the site, it seemed to me that this curve of the ditch that we got here, like that, was actually wider than what we were projected in the field next door.
But we had 3 guys working that out last night, so they all got it wrong.
Well, they may not have got it wrong, it just looked different from above, and it worried me that we might be basing where the ditch was and basing, therefore, where the middle was on, you know, it just didn't look right.
Even though everyone's bottling up their feelings, it's been a tense and frustrating day for the archaeologists. Nerves are beginning to fray, particularly when one of the crew steps into Phil's newly cleaned trench.
David! Sorry, sir.
Phil, can we walk across your lovely ditch?
Yeah, that's all right, Tony.
Mark? You got something for us?
Yes, Tony. At the end of yesterday, having cleaned back in this area, scanned by one of the metal detector users, and we got these 3 little shallow scoops, and in the bottom of each one, a Roman coin.
Wow!
It's a 3rd and 4th century AD.
So do you think these were actually put into those holes deliberately?
Yes.
So not only have we found a new Bronze Age barrow, perhaps 4,000 years old, but also the first evidence of Roman veneration for a prehistoric monument in this part of Britain, 2,000 years later. On the other side of the hedge, the search is now on for more sections of the ring ditch to get a fix on where the centre of the barrow is. That's crucial because it's where you'd find a burial in a classic monument from the Bronze Age. To get to the bottom of its history, Phil's been cutting vertically down through the stuff that filled the original ditch. And he's very pleased with his work.
I think that is an absolutely impeccably cut section. That will be so plumb, people will write books about it.
Even though the mound itself has been ploughed away, bits of Bronze Age pot are circumstantial evidence of cremation burials in a classic barrow. It's one of the practices that arrived in Britain in the Bronze Age. At the bottom of Phil's beautiful little trench, there are some mysterious features which are exciting miles.
You see, we've got these almost like post holes and post pipes in each section. Look,
they're quite clear as post holes.
We were just debating whether that's the sort of thing you'd expect to get.
You do in quite a few later Bronze Age and indeed early Bronze Age barrows. The ditch acts as a palisade trench, so you've effectively secured the timbers right at the base of the ditch, and the soil's then piled up around them.
This is intriguing. A palisade around a barrow is definitely not a common feature of Bronze Age monuments. We've revealed most of the ring ditch on the other side of the hedge. Now we can try to work out where the centre is, and whatever it might hold. We're also still looking for possible Roman reuse of the barrow. Remember those Romans who brought us here?
I mean, that's got to be late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, I would have thought.
Really?
Amazingly, to an expert like Phil, a stone tool can be dating evidence. The trimming on this scraper suggests skilled craftsmanship from the Neolithic or Stone Age.
Perfect thing for holding in your hand.
These skills were largely lost in the Bronze Age when metal replaced stone tools. It may add yet another 1,000 years to our monument, and that would definitely account for the odd features.
Is it true that he wasn't that interested in archaeology until we came along?
That's right, absolutely true.
We can't keep him away now.
So is it part of an entrance complex?
Definitely not, no. No, looking at it, it's starting to worry me whether it's actually some kind of quarry, because the sides of it are extremely irregular.
Right.
There's not an awful lot of material in it either.
I see, so they've used that to actually make the mound.
That would be a nice assumption to make, actually.
So one oddity explained, but there's another in the barrow itself. Bridge and Ian are investigating an intriguing area of the ring ditch, which has clearly been filled with burnt material.
The thing about this trench that's amazing is the finds that are coming out. They're coming out left, right and centre, and it's Ian who's really finding them, and I'm just looking at him jealous as anything.
What have you got?
Well, he's just finding all these tools here.
Cool.
Look at them all. I mean, he's got this one here, wonderful thing.
It's a scraper. He used to scrape off hides and things like that.
There's this one here.
That's another scraping edge.
He's found this one here. There's all sorts of things. They've also found some pottery in here. Absolutely brilliant stuff. This one here. You could have a thumb decoration there or a lug that's fallen off.
What kind of period do you reckon this is?
Well, I'd go for Bronze Age, but very early Bronze Age. Maybe transitional.
I think you're probably about right, and I think one of a really good key indicator that sort of provoked discussion is from this piece of pottery here. It's a rim, and it's got whipcord decoration.
What do you mean by that?
Well, can you see here? You've got like a piece of string has been pressed into the wet clay before it was dried.
The string decoration would have been applied before this massive collared urn was fired, about 4,000 years ago.
Absolutely wonderful. It's just the most exciting trench I've worked on, I don't know for how long.
Do we know much about these Neolithic people?
Well, we're really dealing with the first agriculturalists, the first farmers, the first builders of monuments in the Neolithic. Prior to the Neolithic, we just got sort of hunters and gatherers, not really having much of an impact, but the Neolithic farmers are the first people who start building things, big monuments in the landscape, cutting down trees, ploughing fields.
What sort of date?
Well, it dates from around about 4000 BC. So our monument's at the tail end of it, it's about 3000 BC.
Can we work out anything about them as people?
We can. Actually finding the skeletal evidence is often quite rare. We find bits of bodies, but we don't find complete individuals. And that might be what our monument is. It might be a place where bodies are left to decompose and then selected pieces are taken away for burial elsewhere.
Do you find many monuments like this around here?
Not around here, no. So this is actually quite rare. It fills in a nice gap in our Neolithic map.
We appear to have lurched more than 3,000 years back in time since we arrived at the site. Poor old Victor has been struggling to keep up with this archaeological mystery tour. It's not that long since he rubbed out the Romans.
Right,
Oh,
wow.
my.
Hello, Victor. Well, that's a lovely drawing of a Bronze Age round mound. I've got a bit of bad news, though, I'm afraid. No. Material that's coming up now looks Neolithic. So I think we've added about 1,000 years onto the date of the mound.
Redrawing is in order then?
Yes, redesign, I'm afraid.
And as far as the activity is concerned, what would they be?
Well, that is the $6 million question, really. What is going on inside? Our evidence for a number of these sites is you get bits of human remains in the ditch.
Right.
And one suggestion is this is an exposure burial site where bodies decompose. Probably not the nicest of pictures to do, but possibly bodies decomposing in the centre and bits rolling off into the ditches.
Wow.
Stewart's come up with yet another piece of evidence that supports Miles's theory that this may be a Neolithic site. It's all to do with the visibility of the site from the surrounding countryside.
This landscape has just thrown some real surprises in here. This model here shows, the green shows the high ground, and the other colours show the low ground, where the monument can't be seen. So it's there.
So essentially, you can see it when you're somewhere away, but when you're near, it's invisible.
That's a very Neolithic thing to do, to get seclusion. You're not wanting to show off to the landscape, you're actually wanting sort of privacy around it, and our site has got that quality. If you look where the rivers are, here, we put the rivers on this 3D view of the site there.
It's like in the middle of the circle of all those rivers, isn't it?
It is, and it's actually sitting right in that triangle of them. Again, typical Neolithic thing, putting monuments close to watersheds and sources of rivers.
This site has produced one of the biggest range of finds we've ever seen on Time Team. From 5,000-year-old Neolithic chert tools to 500-year-old medieval coins, there's something from every period. And together they've unlocked the secrets of this site. We came here looking for a Roman temple and instead found what we thought was a classic Bronze Age barrow. But it's now clear that our thing began its life in the Neolithic about 5,000 years ago as an enclosure ringed by a ditch and quite possibly by a palisade which was later burnt.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
In 1998, a series of chance finds scattered across this field near Manchester inspired a local enthusiast to start field walking. And for 8 years, he's been walking and walking and walking. Now, after hundreds of hours of close scrutiny, he's accumulated evidence of over 8,000 years of human activity, from the prehistoric to the post-medieval. But it's the Romans who seem to have been particularly active. There's loads of metalwork, including coins, brooches, and this gorgeous little snake bracelet. But the site itself remains an archaeological mystery. So what was going on here? Local archaeologists believe they've discovered a fortlet, but then not all the finds are military, and they cover over 250 years of the Roman occupation. So what were the Romans doing here in Warburton? We've got just 3 days to find out. Warburton's located near Manchester between the River Bollin and the Mersey. The village can be traced back to the Anglo-Saxon period, and its parish church is dedicated to St Werburg, the Anglo-Saxon saint from which Warburton takes its name. But over the past 8 years, the locals have been finding evidence which has pushed back Warburton's origins much further. That's a pretty impressive array you got there, James.
It is, isn't it? We've got stonework here from the prehistoric with the flint work. We've even got Bronze Age, a small axe there, which is really nice. But what's really excited me on this side is all the Roman material, the brooches and some of the coins and the various little bits and bobs.
What do you think it all means, Mike?
We've got quite a lot of material here from the Roman period which is distinctively military, the brooches in particular, and these nice little rings. But we don't get, usually, in the northwest, this kind of concentration. If we're looking at military, I think we could be looking at something like a fort or a fortlet.
It does seem to me to be a bit of a leap of the imagination. From a few finds to an imperial fort with loads of soldiers hacking away at the poor Brits.
But we do have a bit more evidence. The local Archaeology Society have put in 1 or 2 trenches already in the field, and they've got what might be an enclosure, and in one of those trenches there's a ditch, a Punic-style ditch.
What's a Punic ditch?
It's a trap, a Roman military trap.
Francis, could this site be a trap for the enemy?
Well, I think you've got to be a bit, a bit sceptical, because I've seen steep-sided ditches on farms, and to my eye, that metalwork doesn't look military. I think it could be a farm. I think we've got to be very, very careful. Rectangular enclosure doesn't mean fortlet.
So we're putting in our first trench next to the previous excavation so that we can look at the form of this ditch and decide whether it really is Punic. And this will tell us for definite whether the site's military. David, what was the difference between a Punic ditch and any other kind of ditch?
It has a standard V-shaped inner slope, but the outer face is vertical or near vertical, which means that once you've got in there, it's extremely difficult to get out, and you become a sitting duck to the defenders to throw anything at you.
Why were they called Punic ditches? Does that mean they came from Carthage, as in the Punic Wars?
No, they didn't actually come from Carthage, but the point was that the Romans thought the Carthaginians were extremely treacherous, and these ditches were meant to be treacherous to anybody who attacked across them.
As the field walkers continue to march across the field, we still can't be sure whether our Romans were soldiers or farmers. But the finds are coming in thick and fast, and we're hoping they'll give us a clue.
Have we got much? There is a lot of this stuff that looks like brick, isn't there? I wonder if any of that's going to turn out to be the good Roman pottery.
It is, it's just bloody sand, isn't it? Yeah. Just sand, sand and more sand. It's like digging at Bournemouth, isn't it?
At our trench, it looks as though the Romans are about to make an appearance.
Mike, there's your ditch. That looks promising, doesn't it?
So it does look as though that charcoal was coming out the other side, right on the edge of it.
I'll be happier when we got it sectioned.
Yeah, Francis, you put in a long jump pit.
Well, look at this.
Hey, have we got something?
Yeah, look at that. Well, careful, it took us all morning to find that.
Oh, wow. Rarely on day one have I ever seen such a cornucopia of finds. Time's of the essence, since we've only got one day to explore the whole field. So everyone gets busy. Everyone, that is, except Phil, who's refusing to be dragged away from yesterday's trench. And Helen's still got loads of James's finds to double-check.
It's quite worn on that edge.
So that's fixed into the wood of the cart somehow, is it? In the
I think it is. I mean, it's some way of distributing straps around around the cart.
So a rain travels through that.
Yes, yes.
First century AD.
Yeah, I mean, a rain would have run through there because you've obviously got quite a lot of wear on this edge here. It's gone quite thin.
Okay.
And at our original field, Phil's tenacity has paid off. And yes, he's got a result from his trench. I've never been quite sure why we've explored quite this far out in the field.
Well, if you remember, there was metalwork that was coming off the crest. There were 2 concentrations, and Phil's trench was to come down the hill and follow that metalwork. Well, actually, it's been much better than that. We've found 2 lynchets.
What's a lynchet, Phil?
Well, it literally is it's an old field system. What you've got to imagine here, Tony, is literally a stairway of fields running parallel to the slope. And what is happening is that plough soil, as you plough along the slope, soil moves down the slope. And where Francis is, you will have a bank. And down here, you've got a cutaway terrace. You can see here that you've got a dark brown topsoil. That's this stuff, and it comes straight onto natural. Now, as we come down the slope, we've got 3 layers. We've got the dark topsoil, but in the middle, we've got this brown material. which is sloping down here, and at the bottom we've got the natural. And this brown material is where the plough has actually sliced into the natural and moved all the soil down that way. So you'll have a bank here, and here there's a big cutaway. And so you've got a whole series of stairways, and you can see that the next cutaway terrace is up there where the chap is there. So you've got these fields that are about, what, 20, 30 metres wide, going down the hill.
Do we have a date for these lynchets?
Well, we've got scrappy pottery from the bottom of this lynchet that runs through the Roman 16th century and 18th and 19th century. So we might have 2,000 years of agriculture ploughing on this site.
But the important thing is that is exactly when the metal finds were being made. That is exactly the date of all those metal objects.
What's exactly the period? The medieval or the Roman?
Roman into medieval period.
This was a purely agricultural landscape, but we now understand the mechanism by which it formed.
And until we dug this trench down here, we had no indication that there was a pre-existing field system on this hill. The only field system that we could see was the present field system. This shows that there was a completely different landscape here in the Roman and probably in medieval period.
Which is why it's not on the 18th century map, because these fields are totally different.
So finally, we're beginning to reveal the history of this landscape. The lynchets are evidence of an earlier terraced field system, possibly Roman. And this would explain how the finds got into the soil, as rubbish mixed in with the manure which fed the crops.
Well, Stuart, we're getting wildly overexcited about 2 lynchets out there. How do they fit into what we know about the landscape?
I mean, if you go back to the medieval period, what you've got is the medieval village of Warburton here in red. You've got a church down here and a priory, arable ground here, meadow around the edge, and park and manor centre up here, and the peat and mosslands over here. But you've got a strip of open ground, all suggesting that this strip where our fields located is the pasture for the animals of Warburton village and the parish.
So that's the pasture on which you'd have had the animals that would have manured the arable.
That's right. This is quite important in the understanding of this. Also, the pattern of movement actually is along that road that's there today, the road that we come along, leading from Dunham straight down to Warburton and then crossing over the river. The Mersey itself is an important boundary in the Saxon period between Mercia and Northumbria. And if there's Saxon occupation close to a major boundary, there's a very strong chance there might be even Roman occupation.
So those lynchets that we found are likely to predate the medieval pasture, you reckon?
Indeed, yeah, I mean, I would say that quite categorically from the evidence I can put together, yes.
So Phil begins to dig a trench in the new field over the biggest response to see whether there are any finds and to analyse how they got into the ground.
Is that in the spoil that's coming out, or is that in the... Could it be really, really small, or can't you?
Oh, it is very small, yeah.
It seems to be pretty localised, doesn't it? Is it in there, for example?
No. Let's try that for what I've got in my hand. No.
Try that. In there, then?
It's over in that corner somewhere. Must be very, very small, whatever it is. Lead.
Well, I'm damned.
It's a lead seal. You know the seals that they put on the bags? That's what I think it is.
There's quite a nice little pattern on there, isn't it?
Our prize find. Who needs Roman when you've got a seal from a 19th century seed bag? The field's now littered with trenches, and Helen takes a quick tour to see what's turning up.
No features?
We're nothing. No.
No. Anything good?
Well, the last bit that came up, courtesy of the detector, was that.
Oh, yeah.
It was the last bit we came out.
Yes, looks good on that side, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And not much on the other side, probably half a button. Never mind. OK, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
This whole field is dotted with tiny, discrete test pits, and suddenly we've got Phil's zonking great hole. What's that all about?
What we're hoping to prove is that there's a different pattern of finds in the top as opposed to that bit there.
There.
Yeah, then the subsoil, and then on the natural and in features underneath there.
And how are you getting on, Phil?
by and large, all the finds that we get, and they're mainly Victorian, post-medieval. The main thing is that we're recovering all the finds, not just being selective with metal. And certainly, once we get through the topsoil, which is where most of the finds are, once we get into the subsoil, we're not getting anything at all.
So what does all this tell us?
It's telling us quite a lot. I mean, it's telling us that this soil has to be manured. That's where most of these modern finds are finding their way in. And then it's also telling us that below that there's a rather different soil which may represent pasture, and then possibly earlier fields are beneath that. But that earlier soil wasn't being heavily manured.
A bit frustrating for you though, all this digging empty trenches.
I spent my entire life digging holes and finding nothing. I went with Ian, you know, the main digger driver here. He and I dug 1,800 metres across Salisbury Plain in 4 days. And what do we find? One post hole. Was I disappointed? No, of course I wasn't disappointed. The main thing is you solve the problem. We came here 3 days ago. We came here with a set of questions. We wanted to know about the forklift. We wanted to know about the metal objects in the plough soil. And I think over those 3 days, we've answered the specific targets.
I know what did really hack you off, though. The local pub didn't serve real ale.
Yes, you're right there.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.